We're live from New Delhi. You're watching the India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, coming up in the next hour. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrives in Israel as Washington reviews Hamas response to hostage deal offer.
There's still a lot of work to be done, but we continue to believe that an agreement is possible and indeed essential.
U.S. court rejects Donald Trump's immunity claim in 2020 election interference case. And in ICC Under-19 World Cup, India reaches 9th World Cup final, beats South Africa in a thrilling contest at Benoni. And on to details now. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is set to visit Israel and the West Bank later on Wednesday as the conflict in Gaza moves into its 4th month. Key mediators from U.S., Qatar and Egypt looking to end the fighting are confident a truce is achievable, as Sarah Coates reports from Tel Aviv.
Well, there's certainly quiet optimism here in the region that a deal may be done soon to end the war in Gaza and also free the remaining 130 or so Israeli hostages that remain in the Gaza Strip. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken holding a press conference with Qatar's Prime Minister on the back of a closed-door meeting in Doha. They said they received a response on the general framework of an agreement from Hamas. They say they cannot go into any details they are reviewing and will discuss with the Israelis. Well, Blinken says there's still a lot of work to be done, but he believes an agreement is possible. Hamas releasing a statement of its own, saying it's responded to the proposal in a positive spirit, but wants to end the offensive. Now, on Wednesday, the Secretary of State will spend the day here in Israel. He'll land in Tel Aviv. He'll hold meetings here before travelling to Jerusalem, also the West Bank, where he'll meet with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. But certainly expected to be a tough day for the Secretary of State. He's up against the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who remains firm in his stance that there will be no ceasefire until Israel's goals in the Gaza Strip are achieved. He came out earlier this week saying one of those goals is to kill every single Hamas leader. In Tel Aviv, Sarah Coates reporting for DD India.
Well, ahead of Blinken's visit, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre told a briefing on Tuesday that the U.S. is reviewing Hamas' response to a hostage deal, asserting that there's still a lot to do done before having a final deal.
It is important that we get to a humanitarian deal. The president has been and his team has been working around the clock to get this done. We want to make sure we get those hostages home, including the American hostages. We understand there are about 6 of them that are part of that, that are part of the folks who are still part of the hostages, I should be more clear, that are being held. We want to get them home. We want to make sure we get that all-important humanitarian aid to the Palestinian people. That's what we're working on.
Meanwhile, the U.S. House of Representatives rejected a Republican-led bill on Tuesday that would provide $17.6 billion to Israel. Democrats said they wanted a vote instead on a broader measure that would also provide assistance to Ukraine, international humanitarian funding, and new money for border security. Democratic President Joe Biden, who supports the Senate bill, has, however, promised to veto the House's Israel-only measure. Nikaba reports from Washington.
$118 billion deal is all but dead. We have seen considerable opposition from Republicans over the last couple of days and support for it slipping away. It was detailed on Sunday, showing how much support would go to the US-Mexico border, how much aid would go to Ukraine, how much aid would go to Israel. And there seemed to be enough senators on the Republican side of the aisle who said that they would support it, allowing it to pass through the Senate. However, that support has slipped away, and we've seen the House of Representatives, that has a slim Republican majority, making it very clear that they do not intend to pass the bill. And we've also had the former president, Republican Donald Trump, urging lawmakers to vote it down. Publicly, he says it won't do enough to stop illegal migration at the US-Mexico border, but privately, he's clearly very worried that it would give a considerable win to President Biden if it passed ahead of that November election. And that's something that he doesn't want to happen. Now, this bill would have given powers to the president to close the border if there was a spike in illegal crossings. It would have given about $60 billion in aid to Ukraine and around $14 billion to Israel. That aid package for both of those conflicts is now in jeopardy, and there doesn't seem a way to be able to pass a bill that would provide that aid. The big problem, once again, is that immigration is becoming a central issue during this election year, something that Republicans are very keen to hammer Democrats on, arguing that President Biden has been weak on immigration, letting thousands and thousands of migrants cross that border with Mexico every week during the 3 years of his presidency. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
Well, the Iranian ambassador to the United Nations has denied his country is arming the Houthis as the Yemen-based rebels continue to take aim at vessels in the Red Sea. Amir Saeed Iravani told NBC News' Lester Holt that Iran is not at all responsible for the weapons being used by the group it allegedly funds. Those comments came as the Houthis successfully struck a British and US ship on Tuesday, casting doubt on the effectiveness of several waves of Western strikes on missile sites belonging to the militants. Benji Hire reports for more.
So a firm denial from Iran, which also warned the United States not to target a ship which officials in the US believe is providing vital intelligence to the Houthis to enable their attacks in the Red Sea. The Iran-backed proxy group, which Washington now categorizes as a terror organization, continues to hit commercial vessels in the region. Actions it claims are in support of Palestinians amid the Israel-Hamas war. The White House sees those attacks as a threat to the freedom of navigation, raising concerns about an escalation of the conflict in the Middle East and an impact to the global economy, with a vital artery of trade affected by this violence. The international ships in the fiery line on Tuesday weren't badly damaged in this most recent incident, but it does speak to how the Houthi rebels remain undeterred. They say they'll increase the frequency of these attacks if the war in Gaza doesn't stop. Of course, the devastating civil war in Yemen, which has killed hundreds of thousands of people, is still ongoing after nearly a decade. There, Houthis are fighting the United Nations-recognised Yemeni government, backed by neighbouring Saudi Arabia. The attacks in the Red Sea, the retaliatory strikes by the US since, they seem to have put a hold on prospects of a UN-supported peace process that looked promising earlier last year. But the Biden administration insists it isn't planning on intervening in that conflict by overtly helping groups fighting in the war-torn nation. Benji Hire in Washington, reporting for DD India.
Well, the U.S. accused Russia of firing at least 9 North Korean-supplied missiles at Ukraine on Tuesday, while Moscow labeled Washington a direct accomplice in the downing of a Russian military transport plane last month. Russia's UN ambassador, Vasily Nebenzia, and Deputy U.S. ambassador to the UN, Robert Wood, traded the accusations at a UN Security Council meeting on Ukraine. Robert Wood said Russia has launched DPRK-supplied ballistic missiles against Ukraine on at least 9 occasions.
To date, Russia has launched DPRK-supplied ballistic missiles against Ukraine on at least 9 occasions. Russia and the DPRK must be held accountable for their actions, which undermine long-standing obligations under UN Security Council resolutions. These unlawful arms transfers and potential technology transfers from Russia to the DPRK undermine regional stability and the global non-proliferation regime, as well as the Security Council's credibility.
Meanwhile, Vasily Nebenzia accused Washington of direct involvement in the Russia-Ukraine war and said the state is a direct accomplice in this crime as well.
Today, we possess irrefutable evidence that a phased array tracking radar for intercept on target surface-to-air missile was used to carry out the strike, which leaves no doubt that Washington is a direct accomplice in the crime as well.
Reports of a strike hitting a bakery in Russia.
Well, ahead of his visit to Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, UN nuclear watchdog chief Rafael Grossi met Ukrainian President Zelensky in Kyiv on Tuesday. Grossi discussed the current security situation and potential risk at the occupied plant with Zelensky. Grossi plans to visit the plant to assess its feasibility of reducing staff and the safety of its aging uranium fuel. Well, President Volodymyr Zelensky ordered the creation of a separate branch of Ukraine's armed forces devoted to drones, which is a key part of the conduct of the war against Russia on Tuesday. Zelensky signed a decree calling on the government and general staff of the armed forces to work out issues on the creation within the forces of a separate force for drone systems. As per Zelensky's decree, the results of the study would be submitted to the policy-making National Security and Defense Council. Government said Ukraine aims to produce tens of thousands of drones every month.
Defending assaults on battlefields is very often, thanks to drones, the destruction of the occupiers and their equipment. That's also drones. The task list for now is very clear: staff positions for working with drones, special units, effective training, and systemizing the experience in large-scale production, as well as attracting the best ideas and the best specialists to this sphere. These are tasks now for the Army, the Defense Ministry, and the government in general.
Also, in an apparent bid to garner support for Kyiv, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz will visit Washington this week. Scholz will highlight Europe's efforts to help Ukraine. He will have one-on-one talks with US President Joe Biden along with US lawmakers and CEOs on Friday to discuss primarily Ukraine and NATO. An official said that it is important for the Chancellor that all states do their bit to provide support for Ukraine. Scholz's trip comes amid uncertainty over US support for Ukraine, with Congress stalling over Biden's urgent request in October to approve an additional $61 billion. And Swedish prosecutors investigating the 2022 Nord Stream pipeline blast are expected to make a key announcement this week. They could reveal if a suspect is finally being charged in the case after months of speculation. So far, no one has claimed responsibility for the attacks, nor has anyone been held responsible. Ishan Garg has more from Brussels.
An announcement by the Swedish prosecutors is widely anticipated across Europe. The two Nord Stream pipelines transporting Russian gas to Germany were hit by explosions in Swedish and Danish economic zones in September 2022. The blast took place more than 260 feet under the sea surface. Sweden says its investigation in its economic zone found traces of explosives on site, pointing towards sabotage. Parallel investigations are also being conducted by Denmark and Germany. Moscow has accused the United States of carrying out the attack on the gas pipeline and has called for an international investigation. Some reports have also suggested that Ukraine had a role to play. Both the US and Ukraine have denied any involvement. The Nord Stream pipeline, much like the attack on it, has been at the center of a political controversy for years. The US had protested against it, saying it would increase Europe's reliance on Russian energy. The pipeline was not in use due to Russia's war in Ukraine when it was blown up. Swedish investigators had said last year that the investigation into the blast was complex and added that they believed a state actor could be behind it without naming any suspects. Ishan Garg in Brussels, reporting for DD India.
And moving on now, the judge overseeing Donald Trump's civil fraud case has questioned whether a key witness committed perjury or lying under the oath during the former president's trial. In a letter docketed, Judge Arthur Engoron asked lawyers in the case to provide him with a letter detailing anything you know about the situation involving Alan Weisselberg, the former chief financial officer of the Trump organization. Judge Engoron, who was set to deliver the verdict on the 31st of January, now aims to finish the case by mid-February. Trump, the front-runner for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination, is accused in the lawsuit of inflating his net worth by billions of dollars to secure better loan terms. Trump has denied wrongdoing and called the case a political vendetta. Meanwhile, in another blow that brings the former U.S. president a step closer to an unprecedented criminal trial, a federal appeal court on Tuesday said Donald Trump does not have immunity from charges he plotted to overturn his 2020 election defeat. A three-judge panel flatly rejected Trump's arguments that he shouldn't have to go on trial on federal election subversion charges. The panel said the allegations are related to his official responsibilities as president. The court concluded that any executive immunity that may have shielded Trump from criminal charges while he served as president no longer protects him against this prosecution. Trump has vowed to appeal on the ruling. Well, the question now remains whether the Supreme Court will take up a review of the decision. Legal experts say the claim makes no sense as no man is above the law.
It's always been American law that no man is above the law, and they say that several times, and they quote prior decisions that say no man is above the law, and they say it's just hopelessly inconsistent to have a clause in the Constitution that says the president must take care to faithfully execute the laws, which is in there in Article 1, and then to have a system under which he is the only person in the country who could not be prosecuted for a violation of those laws. And they say that's an impossible contradiction, and so to take care to enforce the laws really means the president, again, is not above the law.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. In Sri Lanka, the fifth session of the 9th Parliament to be ceremonially declared open today by President. Amid unabated rise in cases, Rio de Janeiro declares dengue emergency days before Carnival kicks off. And Rio de Janeiro all set for world's largest carnival. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lepakshi Khurana, and moving on. In Sri Lanka, the fifth session of the 9th Parliament is scheduled to be declared open today by President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Following a ceremonial opening of the session, Wickremesinghe will present the statement of government policy in Parliament. The Parliament has informed that arrangements have been made to hold the ceremonial opening of the fifth session as a formal ceremony, and thus gun salutes and motor arcades will not be held. After the President presents the statement of government policy, the House will be adjourned till Thursday. As per Sri Lanka's constitution, the President declares open the Parliament at the commencement of a new session and presides over to present the government's policy statement. And for more on this, we have DD India correspondent Dr. Ahmed Moeen Farooqi joining us from Colombo. Well, Ahmed, all arrangements have been made to hold the ceremonial opening of the fifth session. Ranil Wickremesinghe will declare it open with a policy statement. What can you tell us about it?
And Pakshi, you see, unlike most other places in Sri Lanka, we have a very long session of parliament. Like the previous session, the fourth session went on for 106 days when the business of the parliament went about. So this year, the fifth session would commence today. The ceremonial opening will also be followed by placement of the policy statement by Sri Lanka President Ranil Wickremesinghe. And this policy statement is the one that guides the entire government's plans and policies for the entire year. And this year being the the presidential elections that are being scheduled to be held. So it will be quite critical how the government would want to position itself going into the elections. We have also been noticing that for the last 2 years, Sri Lanka had gone through a very critical kind of an economic crisis, and it is trying to revive its economy ever since. There had been a huge humanitarian assistance from Indian side of about $4.5 billion. In addition to that, we have had development cooperation between India and Sri Lanka. India had also come forward to provide the financing assurances before any other country to IMF so that Sri Lanka could get its bridge financing, the bailout package of $3 billion. Now, after all this, Sri Lanka has tried to somehow manage itself afloat. And now we have to see how Sri Lanka would plan the entire year with regard to how the policies would be framed and how the government would want to position itself going into the elections.
Well, as you said, Ahmed, economic revival on the cards and elections slated later. After the president's statement of government policy, what else is lined up?
You see, today, after the policy statement is addressed by the president, thereafter there will be an adjournment and it will again reconvene tomorrow. Tomorrow, and we are told that 2 days will be given for the adjournment motion, in which they'll discuss and debate about various motions and various policies that had to be discussed in the previous session. And thereafter, the regular business will be lined up. Various committees will be formed. Only the liaison committee is one that will carry forward its businesses from the previous session. But for this session, there will be new committees that will be formed, Lipakshi.
Well, Eamon, thank you so much for that information from there. And moving on, Pakistan tightens security and sets up voting stations a day before general elections. The South Asian nation will go to polls on Thursday in a widely watched election that will lead to a formation of a new government. The elections are taking place after months of delay, as the country has been at the center of political, economic and judicial drama over the past year. The February 8th elections will take place for 336 seats in Pakistan's National Assembly, the lower house of parliament, along with 4 provincial assemblies. The top contenders include former PM Nawaz Sharif and Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, chairman of the Pakistan People's Party. And 3 Senegalese opposition lawmakers were arrested on Tuesday amid the fallout from Parliament's move to delay a presidential vote by 10 months that prompted West Africa's economic and political bloc to call for the re-establishment of the electoral calendar. On Monday, lawmakers approved a last-minute amendment to hold the vote on December 15th instead of 25th February, sealing an extension of President Macky Sall's mandate that has sparked street protest and international alarm. Later on Tuesday, ruling coalition lawmakers held a press conference to defend the move, urging the citizens to take part in a national dialogue to ensure a free and transparent vote. Well, Colombia's government and National Liberation Army rebels have agreed to extend a landmark truce deal that expired last week. The bilateral ceasefire is extended for another 6 months, starting on Tuesday, the same day they announced the creation of a fund backed by multiple donors to finance the process. President Gustavo Petro signed in August last year a deal with ELN for a 180-day halt in fighting following lengthy negotiations. The truce was lengthened by 5 days after it expired last week. Although the ELN suspended kidnappings during negotiations, its leaders asked the government for financial resources, among other items. Pablo Beltran, head of the ELN's negotiation team, said that the fund must be managed with transparency to avoid any corruption. And at least 10 people were killed and many injured in blast at a popular open-air market in Mogadishu in Somalia. The Islamist group Al-Shabaab is known for bombings in Somalia and other countries. The government was not immediately available for comment. Bakara, Mogadishu's largest market, is where most residents buy daily items like food, clothes, medicine and electronics. And Chilean ex-president Sebastián Piñera died in a helicopter crash in southern Chile, prompting outpouring of condolences from Latin American leaders. Piñera, who served 2 non-consecutive terms between 2010 and 2022, often spent his summers near picturesque lakes and frequently piloted his own helicopter. President Gabriel Boric declared 3 days of national mourning, and preparations have begun for a state funeral on Friday. The other 3 passengers survived the incident. And the Brazilian city of Rio de Janeiro has declared a dengue health emergency just days ahead of Carnival's kickoff, where thousands of people are expected to be partying outdoors. According to official data released, Brazil has registered more than 260,000 probable cases of dengue fever since January. There have been 29 confirmed deaths and 173 deaths are under investigation. To cope with the rise in cases, local health authorities have announced the opening of 10 care centers, the creation of an emergency operations center and the allocation of hospital beds for dengue patients. The announcement comes as tourists and revelers are pouring into Rio to take part in street parties and attend the Samba School's flamboyant parades. Well, the heir to the throne, Prince William, will undertake his first ceremonial duties on Wednesday since his father, King Charles, was diagnosed with cancer. Britain's head of state spoke with his younger son, Prince Harry, on Tuesday, having flown in the same day from his home in California. Stuart Smith has more from Buckingham Palace.
It was on Tuesday the public first saw the King after that announcement by Buckingham Palace on Monday, which said that he had cancer. As he left Clarence House, his residence in London, with his wife, Queen Camilla, he looked well, he waved to cameras and then boarded a helicopter from Buckingham Palace behind me to then travel 160 kilometres north to his Sandringham estate, where it seems he will remain while undergoing the cancer treatment. Buckingham Palace have stressed that he will be continuing his work as head of state, his duties which include reviewing legislation and signing off on important documents, and also holding regular meetings with the Prime Minister, though seemingly by video call now that he will not be in London. He'll also, though, be delegating many of his other usual events, such as award ceremonies and charity work, to other members of the royal family, such as his oldest son and heir to the throne, Prince William, who has his first public engagement at Windsor Castle since helping his wife recover from abdominal surgery, and the Queen as well, the wife of the King, will also be helping with those public-facing duties while the King recovers. Stuart Smith in London for DD India.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. The icon of the seas, the world's largest cruise ship, docked in Quintana Roo, Mexico, with thousands of passengers enjoying local attractions. The Royal Caribbean International Cruise Ship, capable of accommodating 8,000 passengers on board, is scheduled to set for sail from Miami. However, environmental groups are concerned about the potential release of harmful methane into the atmosphere by the cruise liner. Scientists predict hundreds of billions of cicadas will appear in parts of the United States this spring, marking the first time since 1803. 2 broods of cicadas, one from northern Illinois and the other from southeastern U.S., will cross paths, with Illinois being the only place where both broods are expected to be visible. This rare event could cause crossbreeding among species that could lead to evolutionary changes. Carnival revelers in Rio de Janeiro are preparing for the world's largest carnival, which is celebrated in the iconic Sambadrome and are marked by hundreds of street parties known as bulletins. Locals and tourists are swarming shops to buy colorful costumes for the massive celebration, which attracts Brazilians and tourists from around the world who take part in elaborate parades in Sambadrome and on the streets. Nearly 300 people attended the China Cultural Center in Paris for the upcoming Chinese New Year celebrations. Teachers and French students performed traditional Chinese instrumentals, while promotional videos for the 2024 gala and an animated clip by China Media Group were shown. The Spring Festival Gala, also known as Chunwan, has been broadcasted live since 1983 and is scheduled for the 9th of February. Well, still to come on DD India News Hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will reply to the motion of thanks in Rajya Sabha, the upper house of the Indian Parliament, on the presidential address delivered to a joint house session on the 31st of January 2024. India will fence the entire 1,643 kilometers long border with Myanmar and build a patrolling track next to the fence. And we also tell you about India's remarkable initiative aimed at empowering women and fostering self-reliance.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and time now for a quick recap of the headlines. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrives in Israel as Washington reviews Hamas response to hostage deal offer. U.S. court rejects Donald Trump's immunity claim in 2020 election interference case. And in ICC Under-19 World Cup, India reaches 9th World Cup final, beats South Africa in a thrilling contest at Benoni. And moving on, budget session of Indian Parliament has been extended by a day till 10th of February. Leaders of both the houses to take up questions related to their concerned ministries. Important papers also to be tabled in both upper and lower houses of Parliament. General discussion on the interim budget of Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir for 2024-25. Discussion and voting on the demands for grants on account of Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir for 2024-25 also to be held. Debate on the motion of thanks on the President's address proposed in Rajya Sabha. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to make a statement on the motion of thanks on President's address in Rajya Sabha. The upper house also to take up a discussion on the interim budget of Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir for 2024-25. And Iran announced the initiation of a visa-free policy for Indian tourists visiting the country. Policy has been rolled out for Indian citizens from February 4th. Individuals holding ordinary passports will be allowed to enter the country without a visa once every 6 months, with a maximum stay of 15 days. Indians wanting to stay for a longer period or make multiple entries within a 6-month period or requiring other types of visas must obtain necessary visas from Iranian missions in India. Also, Iran has become the latest country in the past few months to give visa-free access to India tourists. Vietnam, Thailand, Sri Lanka have also eased visa rules for Indian tourists. And India will fence the entire 1,643 kilometers of long border with Myanmar and build a patrolling track next to the fence, India's Home Minister Amit Shah has said. Taking to X, Amit Shah said the Modi government is committed to building impenetrable borders. It has decided to construct a fence along the entire 1,643 kilometers long Indo-Myanmar border. To facilitate better surveillance, a patrol track along with the border will be paved. Out of the total border length, a 10-kilometer stretch in Moreh, Manipur has already been fenced. Furthermore, 2 pilot projects of fencing through a hybrid surveillance system are under implementation. Additionally, fence works covering approx 20 kilometers in Manipur have also been approved, and the work will start soon. And the Indian government on Tuesday issued an advisory to its citizens travelling to Myanmar's Rakhine region not to travel to that zone in view of the deteriorating security situation, disruption of telecommunications services and severe scarcity of essential commodities there. Indian citizens who are already in Rakhine state are advised to leave the state immediately. Well, with an aim to boost cooperation in the field of agriculture, the first meeting of India and Iran Joint Working Group was held in the national capital of New Delhi. During the meet, officials of both the countries emphasized on increasing cooperation in the field of balancing the import and export of agricultural products between the two nations. And moving on, India's Ministry of State for Defence, Ajay Bhatt, is currently on a 5-day visit to Saudi Arabia from February 4th to 8th for the World Defence Show 2024. The visit has yielded a significant milestone with the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding that underscores the deepening collaboration between India and Saudi Arabia in the field of defence. The MOS Defence, during his visit to Riyadh, actively engaged in discussions with key Saudi officials, including Defence Minister Khalid bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, where they discussed avenues for collaboration aimed at enhancing regional security. And with an aim to further strengthen India-Bangladesh ties, Bangladesh Foreign Minister Dr. Hassan Mahmood arrived in New Delhi on Wednesday on a 3-day visit to India. During his visit, Dr. Mahmood is slated to engage in several meetings in addition to his planned bilateral discussions with India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. Earlier, Bangladesh Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Seheli Sabreen said that issue of mutual interest, including trade, connectivity and energy cooperation, people-to-people contacts and regional cooperation will be discussed between the two sides at the bilateral meeting to further strengthen Bangladesh-India relations. And Guyana's Prime Minister Mark Phillips received a warm welcome on his arrival in India on Tuesday. As per the Ministry of External Affairs, the visit will further strengthen the multifaceted relationship between the two countries. Guyana's PM is scheduled to hold a meeting with India's President Draupadi Murmu. And Indian Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar attended the centenary ceremony of the Indraprastha College for Women on Wednesday. The historic college, which was founded in 1924, marks an eventful 100-year anniversary. Vice President Dhankar addressed the gathering, emphasizing on the role of women in nation building. There will be MOU between Indian Council of World Affairs and Indraprastha Mahila Mahavidyalaya. And Fiji's Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Professor Biman Prasad will become the first foreign leader to offer prayers at the newly built Ram Temple at Ayodhya when he travels there this week. The temple was consecrated by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the 22nd of January. In an exclusive interview to DD India's Ramesh Ramchandran in New Delhi, the visiting minister said that the historic event invoked feelings of identity with India, the country of his forefathers. He said the Lord Ram and the Ramayana are an integral part of the Hindus who landed on the southern Pacific island nation of Fiji as indentured labor in the 19th century.
You will write your name in history books by becoming the first foreign leader to visit the new Ram temple at Ayodhya. How does that make you feel?
Well, Ram and Ramayana have been an integral part of Hindus who left India many years ago as part of indentured laborers. So with them, they carried Ramayana, Gita, and others, carried Quran and Bible. So all those people who left India under the indenture system, which the British executed to take Indian laborers to British colonies elsewhere. So in Fiji, in particular, Ramayana, Gita have always been part of the Hindus' existence and their identity. So when one talks about Ayodhya, it immediately invokes the great feeling, the recital of the epic Ramayana, where Lord Ram returns to Ayodhya. And Diwali is a national holiday in Fiji, celebrated to mark the return of Lord Ram to Ayodhya, after 14 years of exile. So it does invoke a lot of yearning, emotion, and the feeling of connectivity and identity with India. So yes, it does invoke a lot of emotional ties with India.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news today. India's Anti-Money Laundering Agency Enforcement Directorate met today a request for an early hearing on the case at Delhi's Rouse Avenue Court against Arvind Kejriwal for ignoring its summons repeatedly. The ED has issued summons to Arvind Kejriwal 5 times in the money laundering case related to Delhi liquor policy scam, but he has failed to appear before the ED, skipping all of them. Following this, the investigating agency had approached the Rouse Avenue Court last Saturday. 11 people were killed and over 200 others were injured after a major fire broke out in a firecracker factory in Harda town of Indian state of Madhya Pradesh. Quick action and efforts are being made by the national and state disaster relief forces to provide every possible relief. According to an official, the injured have been rushed to hospital and some of them are in a critical condition. India's politician Sharad Pawar's National Congress Party has been stripped of its election symbol by the Election Commission of India. The symbol, meanwhile, has been allocated to the political faction of his nephew Ajit Pawar. The Election Commission, in a special concession to the Sharad Pawar group, allowed it a one-time option to claim a name for its new political outfit and sent 3 preferences to the EC by 3 p.m. IST on Wednesday. Preparations of the Indian Air Force for its mega exercise Vayu Shakti 2024 to be held on 17th of February is presently underway at the Jodhpur Air Force Station in the Indian state of Rajasthan. During the exercise, the Air Force will demonstrate its air power and operational capabilities by focusing on interoperability and maneuvering expertise. Amid intense cold wave conditions across India's Himachal Pradesh, visuals of fresh snowfall at the Atal Tunnel in Rohtang shared by Manali police is doing rounds on the internet. Meanwhile, with predictions of a snowfall throughout the state for the next 2 days, the Regional Meteorological Centre in Shimla issued an orange alert for the state. A remarkable initiative aimed at empowering women and fostering self-reliance was organized in northern India's Udhampur. The program also aimed at protecting the planet from plastic as women stitched jute bags for a greener future. And still to come on DD India News Hour. With farmer protest over Europe in full swing, a strict target set up by European Union to dramatically reduce emissions in the next decade. Top sports court to hear Simona Halep's doping ban appeal suspended since October 2022. And we'll show you stunning National Heritage Park in China glittering with lanterns combining traditional aesthetics with modern elements.
The gateway to northeast India welcomes you to the land of untouched natural beauty and diverse history.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Now. I'm Lipakshi Khuranan. On to some business news now. NG, a lower carbon energy solution provider in India, is working on decarbonization and green energy initiatives at the India Energy Week. Recently, NG secured a 400 megawatt solar project in Gujarat. NG India, the India arm of French energy giant, plans to invest in India, especially in green hydrogen sphere. Our correspondent Tapas Bhattacharya spoke to Amit Jain, CEO and country manager, India NG. Here is more.
Joining me is Amit Jain, the CEO of NG India, to talk about India's growth when it comes to renewable energy sector. So, we have been seeing India taking a leap when it comes to renewable energy in the last 10 years. How do you see that sector growing up under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership?
India is growing in terms of renewables, right? As you said, the government and our Prime Minister here in India, set ambitious targets to about 500 gigawatt by 2030. The target was about 5 years ago, it was 175 gigawatts. So there's been a massive uptick in the targets, right? For us as a company, we are French headquartered, but we are a global company. So we see India as one of the priority markets for us, especially in India. The idea is to grow, from about a 2 gigawatt platform, add about 800 to 1 gigawatt every year for the next 5 years, and take it to about 5 gigawatt platform.
Tell us more about that and how do you want to, put your ambition in India?
So what we've done is we've selected states. India is a large country, of course, right? So the idea is to be very selective in our approach. So we selected key states, right? So Gujarat is one of the focus states. It gives us good policy support. The government is conducive to the renewable growth, and we have done a lot of projects there already. And the idea is to take it to the next level and do about 2.5 gigawatt by 2030 in the state of Gujarat itself.
How do you think green hydrogen is going to make a major impact on that?
The idea is to look at how we can use the RE experience in developing green hydrogen or green ammonia, service the customers maybe outside India to begin with, and then as the market matures in India itself, to look at customers in India as well. Because indeed, a lot of our customers, as part of the decarbonization goal, have green hydrogen in their bucket list or their wish list. But the idea is to grow that as we go along, as the technology matures, as the prices come down.
That was Amit Jain saying that it is high time that Indian government is working on close coordination with the companies in renewable sector, and they are also planning to set shop, especially in the state of Gujarat and other places, and help India become carbon net neutral by 2070. With camera person Ajit, this is Tapas Bhattacharya for DD India from Goa.
And moving on, the European Union has set itself a strict target to dramatically reduce emissions in the next decade, despite ditching other environmental laws. The moves come as farmer protests disrupted several European cities in the last 2 weeks. Alex Cardia reports for more from Brussels.
Well, just 5 days ago, this square outside of the European Parliament was completely blocked by thousands of tractors. Farmers lit bonfires, threw eggs at the European Parliament building and bricks at police. Now it's been cleaned up, and the European Commission has backed down on some of its new environmental rules. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said that she would scrap a target to halve the use of pesticides in Europe and roll back on climate targets, specifically for the agricultural sector. Rules on animal welfare and allowing land to rest in order to allow rejuvenation have also been scrapped. But the main announcement stayed. The European Commission has recommended the EU reduce emissions by 90% by 2040. Nevertheless, Ursula von der Leyen's European People's Party in the European Parliament is under increased pressure from the far right ahead of elections in June. Some of those right-wing parties were here with the farmers during their protest, courting their votes just a few days ago. Polling shows that far-right parties across the EU are on course to have their best election ever. Heading into the last elections in 2019, young people had been staging climate protests across Europe. And back then, Ursula von der Leyen proudly campaigned in favour of a Green Deal and pushing ambitious climate targets for the European Union. She said Europe would be the first climate-neutral continent by 2050. This time, farmers have taken to the streets. They blocked most of Brussels just last week and blockaded the port of Antwerp. They also took over motorways in France. They protested in Greece, Portugal and Italy. Under pressure from farming groups, the political mood and the EU's world-leading climate policies are now starting to shift. Alex Khadje in Brussels reporting for DD India.
Well, the European Commission has announced that EU aims to slash its net greenhouse gas pollution by 90% by 2040 as part of its push to become the world's first climate-neutral continent before elections in June. Under a landmark proposal laid out by its executive body on Tuesday, the bloc will have to pump 90% less planet heating gas into the air by 2040 than it did in 1990. The EU has set a legally binding objective of climate neutrality by 2050. Meanwhile, other observers said that the EU's 2040 plan relied too much on expensive carbon capture technology and would necessitate large investments in order to meet the EU's carbon removal targets. Well, you're watching DD India News Hour, and time now for some sports news. India entered a consecutive 5th Under-19 World Cup final as they beat host South Africa in the first semi-final of the Under-19 World Cup by 2 wickets at Willamore Park in Benoni on Tuesday. Chasing 245, middle-order batter Sachin Das hit 96 runs, while captain Uday Saharan scored 81 runs to bail India out after a top-order collapse. Earlier, Luandre Pretorius and Richard Seletswane smashed half-centuries to help South Africa post 244 for 7. For India, Raj Limbani took 3 wickets, while Mushir Khan also bagged a couple of scalps. India will play the final against the winner of the semi-final between Australia and Pakistan. Also, India will tour Zimbabwe for T20 International Series in July, right after the T20 World Cup in the West Indies and the USA. Zimbabwe Cricket Board and the Board of Control for Cricket in India on Tuesday announced that Zimbabwe will host India for 5-match series in Harare starting from the 6th of July. This is India's 4th trip to Zimbabwe for a T20 International Series after 2010, 2015 and 2016. India have never played a bilateral series against Zimbabwe at home, but they have toured the African country in the past. BCCI Secretary Jay Shah said it's an exciting phase in world cricket as Zimbabwe cricket is rebuilding and that India would do its best to support the growth of cricket in the country. Well, Lionel Messi and his interim Miami teammates arrived in Tokyo, Japan for the next leg of their tour of Asia and will play Vissel Kobe today. Speaking to media for the first time since the team and their co-owner David Beckham were booed off the field after Messi missed a friendly match against Hong Kong, Messi said on Tuesday it was unfortunate that he was unable to play, citing swelling in the adductor muscle.
It was some bad luck that I could not play on the day of the match in Hong Kong. In the first match in Saudi Arabia, I felt some pain in my abductor muscle and that's why I left that match. In the second match, I played several minutes so that I could test how I felt. Because I had an MRI and it showed a swelling in the abductor. It was not an injury, that's why I tried and tested it out.
Well, the top court in global sport will hear the appeal of former Wimbledon and Roland Garros champion Simona Halep against a doping suspension starting today. The 32-year-old Romanian has been provisionally suspended since October 2022 after testing positive for banned roxadustat, which stimulates the production of red blood cells at the US Open that year. Tennis anti-doping authorities also charged Halep with another doping offense last year due to irregularities in an athlete biological passport, a method designed to monitor different blood parameters over time to reveal potential doping. Halep has vigorously denied the charges. The hearings at the Lausanne-based Court of Arbitration for Sport are expected to run until Friday. And Saudi Arabia will host a new elite tennis exhibition featuring Novak Djokovic and Rafael Nadal with 3 other Grand Slam winners in October, the country's General Entertainment Authority has announced. Carlos Alcaraz, Jannik Sinner, Daniil Medvedev and Holger Rune will also play at the 6th Kings Slam, which will form part of the Saudi Cultural and Entertainment Festival Riyadh season. With Sinner having recently won the Australian Open, Dane Rune is the only player on the 6-man roster with a Grand Slam title. While exhibition events in the Gulf are nothing new, they're usually played during breaks in the ATP season or after it has finished. The ATP has a full schedule in October, including mandatory Masters 1000 tournaments in Shanghai and Paris. And on to soccer now. Mausi Tomari scored a brilliant curling strike to stunt two-time winners South Korea and send Jordan their first Asian Cup final on Tuesday with a 2-0 victory. Yazan Al-Naimat put Jordan ahead at the start of the second half with a clever dink before Tomari doubled their lead with a superb solo effort. Jordan had never gone beyond the quarterfinals before this year's tournament. They will face host Qatar or Iran in Saturday's final. And at Daming Palace National Heritage Park in Xi'an City in China, visitors can enjoy contemporary lanterns infused with elements from the popular online game King of Glory. This year's Spring Festival, which falls on Saturday, combines traditional aesthetics with modern elements, creating a visually stunning spectacle. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.